What's up YouTube, it's your boy Nash here, welcome back to the channel. Now before we get into today's video guys, we are 24 subs away from 200. Guys, we're getting there, we are getting closer and closer to the goal of 200. Let's see if we can get to 200 subs before the summer comes to a close. Can we do it? I think we can. Because as I have said in previous videos, if this channel does get to 200 subs, I will open up this Korean Strike of Neos booster box in its entirety on the channel on the hopes of it to potentially pull this guy, Elemental Hero Air Neos, the so-called forbidden Yu-Gi-Oh card. Is it really forbidden? I'll let you guys be the judge of that. If this channel gets to 500 subs, I will open up this Korean LOB booster box in its entirety on the channel that I got for my partners over at Collector Store. So be sure to check them out. Link and address will be in the description below. By checking them out, not only does it support them, it also supports the channel, and I would greatly appreciate it. On the hopes to potentially pull a Blue Eyes White Dragon, a Dark Magician, a Red Eyes Black Dragon, a Piece of Exodia, Pot of Greed, Swords of Revealing Light, Monster Reborn, the possibilities are out there. However, if this channel gets to 1,000 subs, I will open up this first edition Toon Chaos box in its entirety on the channel that I also got from my partners at Collector Store on the hopes to potentially pull my second ever Collector's Rare, because if you guys missed out on my Genesis Impact box opening, I pulled this, a Collector's Rare Beacop from the Underworld. Under the right light, you can easily tell it's a Collector's Rare. Yeah, right there, you can easily tell it right here, it's a Collector's Rare. I will be getting this graded at some point. I don't really know when, but I will. So if you guys want to see these boxes get opened, maybe you guys want more episodes of WWE's Biggest Issue. Maybe you guys want more episodes of Yu-Gi-Oh's Biggest Issue, deck profiles, card discussions, WWE topic videos, or maybe you guys want some premium live event predictions and results. Well, if you guys want all of that and more, my channel is the place to be. So if you guys have not done so already, be sure to subscribe to the channel, turn on the notification bell, smash that thumbs up button on this video, and be sure to follow me on all of my social media. My ads will be in the description below, as will the info to my fan mail. It will also be in the description as well. And I want you guys to post in the comments below answering the question of the day, which is this. I don't think I ever asked this question before, but what would you consider to be the most broken deck in Yu-Gi-Oh's history? Let me know down in the comments below, because today's video, we have a deck profile for you guys. But looking at this deck, I might have just broke the meta, because I am going to be doing a Kashtira Runick deck profile. I realized, ironically enough, that both of these decks both of these archetypes are just absolutely broken. They are so good with one another, just because of the fact that you have two different styles, two different deck styles. So the idea for this deck, game one, if you were to play a best 2 out of 3, the idea would be this. Game one, you would basically go the Kashtira build, which would be the Arise Heart triple Shangri-Era Red Eyes Flare Metal Dragon. That's basically the board that you want to go for the most. But once the match goes to a game 2, you basically side out the Kashtira Exceeds monsters and go into more of a beatdown style with the extra deck, which is pretty insane. So again, that's one of the general ideas of the deck, which is actually kind of crazy. But you guys are wondering, what is in this extra deck? what cards do I have? What cards is in this deck? Well, we are going to get started with this deck profile because obviously we know that both the Runick decks and the Kashtira decks did indeed get hit on the ban list, with Unicorn semi-limited to 2, Runick Fountain limited to 2, Kashtira Arise Hard limited to 1. It's pretty crazy, and of course two number 89 being banned, which obviously was one of the more like powerful strategies that they could use instead of using Kashtira Birth to banish cards, which is pretty crazy. So without any further ado, let's get straight into it. Kicking these off, we got the usual Kashtira lineup. We have 2 Ogre, 2 Unicorn, 3 Fenrir, 2 Scareclaw Kashtira, 2 Rise Heart, 2 Ash Blossom, and 2 Ghost Bell. Ogre's effect is if you control no monsters, you can special summon this card from your hand, and you can only use each effect once per turn. During your main phase, you can add 1 Kashtira trap from your deck to your hand. When this card declares an attack, or if your opponent activates a monster effect, except during the damage step, excavate the top 5 cards of your opponent's deck, banish 1 excavated card face down, and place the rest on top of the deck in the same order. So the idea for this is for you to have Arise Hard, triple Shangri Era on board, activate Ogre's effect, especially if your opponent activated a card effect. You basically get to banish 1 card out of the top 5 cards of your opponent's deck, banish that 1 card face down, Shangri Era's effect will trigger, and you get to basically use up 3 of their zones, which could be 3 monster zones, 3 back row zones, or it could be 2 back row, 1 front lines, or it could be 2 front lines and a back row. The possibilities are pretty much out there, but this is actually a really good one. The only downside is that there's only 3 traps in this deck, and you're not really using Ogre's effect to search the traps, unless if you want to thin out the deck even more to try for you to see your Runick spells. But as long as you're able to banish cards using Ogre's effect, you're pretty much just off to the races from there. Now Unicorn has the same first effect, but its other effect says once per turn during your main phase you can add a Kashtira spell from the deck to the hand. And whenever this card declares an attack, or if your opponent activates a monster effect, except during the damage step, you get to look at your opponent's extra deck and banish a monster from it face down. This is basically number 89, but the only downside is that this can miss timing. That's like the big issue. Excuse me. But as long as you have triple Shangri Era and you're able to banish cards from your opponent's extra deck every turn, you basically get to force your opponent to not play Yu-Gi-Oh whatsoever, which is pretty nuts. The 3 Fenrir, you basically get to add a Kashtira monster from the deck to the hand, and whenever this card declares an attack, or if an opponent activates a monster effect, you're able to target a face-up card that they have on board and banish it face down. This gives you again. This basically gives you more access to activate Shangri Era's effect to basically use up their zones, which is pretty nuts. The Scareclaw Kashtira is kind of an odd one, but the cards are actually pretty good. So it says during the main phase as a quick effect, you can special summon this card from your hand, and if you do, banish 1 Kashtira or Scareclaw card from your hand or grave, and you can only use this effect once per turn. This card can attack while face up in defense, so it has an effect similar to the Super Heavy Samurais, which is pretty cool. If it does, apply its defense for a damage count. If your Kashtira Scareclaw monster battles an opponent's monster, that opponent's monster's effects are negated until the end of the turn. So this sort of has like built-in negation in a way. But for the most part, you're going to be using all these monsters, including the Rise Heart, to go into your Kashtira board. But once you go into game 2, you're gonna be using your Ready Fusion, Instant Fusion cards to go into your fusion tuner monsters to go into your synchro plays. Which once we get into the extra and side deck, you will know how crazy this deck really is. Then of course the 2 Rise Heart. This can basically turn itself into a level 7 monster just by banishing a Kashtira card from your deck, which is pretty cool. And not only that, you also get to mill the top 3 cards of your opponent's deck and banish them face down, which gives you more access for Shangri-Ira's effect, which is pretty cool. And then of course the 2 Ash and the 2 Bell are basically just hand traps. You can never go wrong with those. For the spells, there's a fuck ton of them. So for the 1-ofs, we got the 1 Instant Fusion, the 1 Ready Fusion, and then the 1 Harpy's Feather Duster, which just those 3 cards alone are just absolutely insane. Not much else to say about that. Then of course we got 2 copies of Mass Change 2, because obviously we are running a few masked heroes. Tune the extra, 1 on the side. Once we get to the extra deck, you guys will know. And then for the Kashtira spells, we got pretty much the standard lineup: triple Birth, triple Theosis, and then of course triple Pressure Planet Wrathsoth. So Kashtira Birth basically lets you normal summon level 7 monsters without tributing, which is pretty awesome. Not only that, but it also acts as a sort of like a DDR / like Monster Reborn, where you're able to summon monsters from your graveyard or that are banished, which is pretty nuts. And not only that, if your opponent activates a spell or effect and you control a Kashtira monster, you're able to target 3 cards in your opponent's grave and banish them face down, which is pretty good. Which again, Shangri-Ira. If you're able to make a Rise Heart triple Shangri-Ira with Birth and the Pressure Planet on board, you basically during game 1, you basically have your board right there, which is absolutely nuts. Theosis basically just lets you special summon a Kashtira monster with a different attribute from your deck in defense, and it also acts as sort of like a basically as a extra deck lock, if you will. So Theosis effect reads: target 1 Kashtira monster you control, special summon a Kashtira monster with a different attribute from your deck in defense, and for the rest of the turn, after this card resolves, you cannot special summon monsters from the extra deck except Exceeds monsters. And if this card is banished, you can target 1 of your banished Kashtira cards except this card added to your hand. So that's actually pretty cool, because if Birth were to be banished, you can add Birth back to your hand, which is pretty cool. Now the Pressure Planet basically acts as a Rhoda, where you can add a Kashtira monster from your deck to your hand, and all monsters you control gain 100 attack and defense for each different attribute that's on board, which is pretty cool. And if a Kashtira Shangri-Ira you control activates its effect, you're able to just pop 1 card that your opponent has on board, or 1 card you have on board, and send it to the graveyard, which is actually pretty nuts. So that's basically it it for the Kashtira lineup. Aside from the fact that we've got a Kashtira Big Bang and 2 Kashtira preparations for the traps. For the Runick lineup, we've got basically 2 of everything. We've got 2 Freezing Curses, 2 Tip, 2 Slumber, 2 Flashing Fire, 2 Smiting Storm, which I'll talk about that here in a second, 2 Destruction, and 2 Fountain. Freezing Curse effect. So all of the Kashtira Quick Play spells have the same second effect where it says that you're able to special summon a Runick monster from your extra deck to the extra monster zone, but the first effect are all different. So Freezing Curse effect says target one effect monster your opponent controls negates effects until the end of the turn, then banish the top 3 cards of your opponent's deck. Tip is basically a Rhoda. So it says add one Runick card from your deck to your hand, accept this card, then banish the top card of your opponent's deck. Slumber says target one face-up monster on the field. The next time that monster will be destroyed by battle or card effect this turn, it is not, and also it cannot attack this turn. Then, after applying this effect, banish the top 3 cards of your opponent's deck. Flashing Fire lets you target a special summon monster your opponent controls, destroy it, and then banish the top 2 cards of their deck. Smiting Storm says banish cards from the top of your opponent's deck up to the number of cards they control. This basically is a way to force deck out your opponent, especially if their whole board is completely full. That's basically what 5, 10, 11. That's literally 5, 11. That's up to 12. Up to 12 cards banished. That's nuts. That is nuts. And then Runick Destruction is basically MST. Target one spell trap your opponent controls. Target one spell trap your opponent controls. Destroy it. Then banish the top 4 cards of your opponent's deck. Runick Fountain, the field spell says you can activate the Runick. You can activate Runick Quick Play spell cards from your hand during your opponent's turn. Once per turn, if you activate a Runick Quick Play spell, you can target up to 3 Runick Quick Play spells in your grave, place them on the bottom of the deck in any order, then draw the same number of cards. This basically is essentially kind of like a Moray of Greed on steroids. The biggest downside with the Runick spells is that the first line of text says activate one of these effects, but skip your next battle phase after activation. That's how crazy it is. So this lineup is absolutely nuts because you basically have back row removal in the form of the Runick. I can't speak. I'm autistic. The destruction, the 2 destruction, the 1 feather duster, plus you even also have as well have another back row removal card in the form of the Mass Hero Acid, which I will talk about here in a second. You got quite a bit of back row removal, monster destruction, monster negation. That's just that's how good this deck is. It is that fucking good. And then of course the traps again, as I talked about, we've got the one Big Bang and the 2 preparations. You don't really use them all that much. They're mainly in here as discard fodder for Mass Change 2 for the most part, and even also for the Runick monsters that are in the extra deck, which I'll get to that here in a second. But so that's pretty much it. That's pretty much it for the main deck. For the extra deck, I'm gonna go backwards from Xyz to Fusion just to showcase how crazy this extra deck is. So for my extra deck, I've got 3 Shingir Era, 1 Red Ice Flare Metal Dragon, 1 Arise Heart, 1 Bet On, 1 Psychic and Punisher, 2 Huggin the Runick Wings, 2 Jerry the Runick Fangs, a Magic Key Beast, and Cialabolas, a Sea Monster of Thesis, a Sea Monster of Thesis, a Master Hero Acid, and a Master Hero Divine Wind. Shangri-Era, obviously, whenever cards are banished face down, you get to target unused zones that your opponent has, and basically you use them up. Red Eyes Flare is a sort of like a disruption, where if your opponent were to activate cards or effects, they get dealt 500 points of damage, which is pretty nasty. And a Rise Heart basically acts as sort of like another disruption, if you will. So the effect reads: once per turn, you can also exceed summon this card by using one Kashtira monster you control. If an effect of Kashtira Shangri-Era was successfully activated this turn, transfer its materials to this card. Any card sent to the grave is banished instead. So it has a sort of like a Dark Law effect, which is pretty crazy. Which is pretty crazy, but it goes both ways, sadly. Once per chain, each time a card is banished, attach one banished card to this card as material. Once per turn, as a quick effect, you can detach 3 materials from this card, target a card on the field, and banish it face down, which again gives you more access for Shangri-Era. Now for Bet On, it's basically a solemn judgment plus a MST trap hole, which is pretty nasty. Psychic End Punisher is a good way to end games, especially if you keep it on board. You're able to give it more and more and more attack, and you can basically just push for game with that card, with this card, which is absolutely nuts. The 2 Huggin, you basically get to add a Runick field spell to your hand, in which the only Runick field spell is obviously Runick Fountain, which is pretty cool. And then Jerry is in here as a way to as a way to search out pretty much any card, any Runick spell that's not a quick play. So if you have Runick Fountain in graveyard, you can basically add it from your grave to your hand, which is pretty cool. And what's even more cool about Jerry is that if Jerry were to be destroyed by battle, you get to pop a card on the field, which is pretty nuts. Huggins' effect says that if this card on the field is destroyed by battle, a card effect, return this card to the extra deck. So this is a good way to get even more value out of it, because if you were to mill Runick Fountain, you can continue to add Fountain from your graveyard from your deck from your deck and whatnot to your hand, and you can just go from there. As long as you're able to recycle Fountain back into the main deck, which I don't think this deck can. That's actually pretty nasty. Now the NCL Bolus and the Sea Monster are basically the instant fusion, ready fusion targets to help you go into your synchro plays, which is pretty cool. Master Hero Acid again is basically a second Harpy's Feather Duster, which is pretty nasty. And then Master Hero Divine Wind is basically a Dark Door plus 1. So what I mean by that is so the effect says that Divine Wind cannot be destroyed by battle, and your opponent can only attack with 1 monster during each battle phase. And when this card does destroy an opponent's monster by battle and sends it to the graveyard, you're able to draw 1 card. This gives you access to try and thin out the deck even more, to try and get out your Runick Runick spells, to go into Jerry, to go into Huggin, and get even more value off of that, which is pretty nasty. Now for my side deck, the side deck is mainly in here to go up against the mirror matches and going up against like any deck that basically just overcommits to their board, which is pretty nasty. So for my side deck, I have 2 copies of Nibiru, 2 Ghost Ogre, a Master Hero Dark Law, obviously, a Geomathematic Final Sigma, a Draco Berserker of the Tenny, a Side-Friendly Omega, and an Ancient Fairy Dragon, a Change of Heart, 2 Runick Allure, a Judgment of Anubis, and 2 Solemn Warning. Nibiru is in here for the Kashtira mirror matches, and also for Sky Strikers, and pretty much like any deck that can will overcommit to their board, not without even realizing that you are running Nibiru, which is pretty nasty. Ogre is in here for the Runick mirror matches, because of the fact that Fountain will end up remaining on board. So if they activate Fountain's effect, you can automatically Ghost Ogre them, and basically Fountain would be destroyed right then and there. Dark Law is basically Macrocosmos confiscation, if you will, which is absolutely nasty. Not much else to say about that. So the idea for Dark Law, especially if you side out all 4 Kashtira Xyz monsters, the idea would be for you to go, I'll say, Runick Freezing Curses, special summon Jerry to the board, trigger Jerry's effect, add Fountain from your graveyard back to your hand, activate Mass Change 2, pitch, I'll say, Kashtira Big Bang, say, pitch Kashtira Big Bang, and send Jerry to grave, and then basically just summon Dark Law. That's the basic idea, which is pretty crazy. Is it possible? I think the ruling is that you can, I believe. I'm not so sure, but yeah, that's the basic idea, which is pretty nasty. Final Sigma is in here as like a game changer, similar to the Psychic and Punisher. So the effect of Final Sigma reads that this card is unaffected by card effects except Mathmech cards while in the Action Monster Zone. If this card in the Action Monster Zone battles an opponent's monster, any battle damage inflicted to your opponent is doubled. If this card is destroyed by battle, or if this card in its owner's possession is destroyed by an opponent's card effect, you can add 1 Mathmech card from your deck to your hand. So the idea is for you to deal double damage to your opponent. That's the basic idea, especially if the monster has half attack than Final Sigma. That would be what? 1,500. So basically you're taking Mathmech's full attack as damage, which is pretty nasty. Draco Berserker is basically Solemn Judgment, Bottomless Trap Hole in a way, and it gains more attack, and it can attack twice in a single turn, which is pretty nasty. Omega is in here as a way to recycle cards back into your graveyard, so you can banish them again, and the cycle would just continue from there, which is pretty nasty. And then Ancient Fairy Dragon is only in here as a last resort if you're unable to go into, if you don't have a way to search out the Pressure Planet or the Runick Fountain, you basically have Ancient Fairy Dragon to search it out. You gain 1,000 life points, and you can add one of those 2 field spells to your hand, which is pretty nasty. Change of Heart is actually another card that you can use to help go into Dark Law. If you're unable to use Jerry, Change of Heart is in here to target pretty much any 5-star monster, that any 5-star dark monster that your opponent has on board. Switch it to your side, activate Mass Change 2, pitch the Kashtira Big Bang or the Kashtira Preparations, target that monster, send it to your graveyard, summon Dark Law, and you basically have your board right there, which is pretty nasty. Then of course the Runick Allure. So Runick Allure is a continuous spell that reads each time that reads, each time a quick play spell activates, banish the top card of your opponent's deck. So if you activate any of your Runick quick play spells, or if you activate a card like say Mash Change 2 in the like, you basically get to get to banish even more cards from the top of your opponent's deck, which again forces the possible deck out, which is pretty nasty. Judgment of Anubis is in here as a way to stop cards like Harpy's Feather Duster and cards like MST, because I know that in some decks in today's Yu-Gi-Oh, I've seen decks run MST for some reason. So cards like so again, this is in here to stop cards like Harpy's Feather Duster, MST, and even also Runick Destruction as well. This is Judgment of Anubis can actually stop Runick Destruction, so it's more suited for the mirror matches, if you will. Well, I only have one because I needed to make room for the 2 Solemn Warning, because Solemn Warning is Solemn Warning. So I will be posting this deck list on my Instagram. So if you guys have not done so already, be sure to follow me there. My @ will be in the description below. And that will do it for today's video. Hopefully you guys enjoyed. If you did, make sure you guys smash that thumbs up button. If you guys are new to the channel and you guys want more deck profiles in the future, make sure you guys subscribe to the channel, turn on the notification bell, and follow me on all my social media. My @ will be in the description below, as will the info to my fan mail. It will also be in the description as well. And on that, this is your boy Nash, signing out.